Hey, welcome to Film Fanatics, three film geeks discussing movies both new and old. My name is Dan.
My name is Justin.
And I'm Joe.
This week we learn about NWA and Straight Outta Compton. Another 60s spy show gets the big screen treatment with the Man From U.N.C.L.E. We'll also review Jason Bateman in the thriller The Gift, the latest from Woody Allen, Irrational Man, and we'll go back to the Jurassic with Dino Time in our home media moment. Inspired by Compton, our top 5 this week is our favorite music biopics. And our double feature of older films, we've got Justin's pick for old classic Big Fish and the Oscar-nominated film Bad Day at Black Rock. First up, though, is Straight Outta Compton. This was a huge success opening weekend with $60 million in box office receipts. It's a music biopic about the rise and fall of late 80s and early 90s rap group NWA, which gave the world, among others, Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, and Eazy-E. Cube's own son, O'Shea Jackson Jr., plays his father. Corey Hawkins is Dr. Dre, Jason Mitchell is Eazy-E, Aldia Hodge is MC Ren, Paul Giamatti is manager Jerry Heller, and R. Marcus Taylor is Suge Knight. The film was directed by longtime Cube collaborator F. Gary Gray. Now, the first thing you notice about this movie is how incredibly casted it is. Now, obviously, Cube's son bears more than a striking resemblance, but Hawkins is astounding as Dr. Dre, and Mitchell as Eazy-E also fits the bill very well.
It was like watching Eazy-E.
It was crazy. The not just the actors themselves, but, the makeup people and the clothing, the wardrobe people. Mm-hmm. But Compton rises above most of the music bios we've seen recently because it gives us this unflinching look into the world surrounding these artists. Not just the music industry itself, their hardships within that, but, here we've got the drug dealing, the police brutality, infested streets that they grew up on, their involvement with all of that stuff before their music career even got going. And to that end, my only real problem with the movie is that I wanted more background, more of what exactly it was that made NWA so groundbreaking and influential to an entire genre of music. In that similar vein, the film's overly long runtime only drags once the group breaks up. There's about a half hour left in the film that focuses on some of the members' solo careers, in one instance, death. Those notes are very important in the story, of course, but could have been told quicker, I think, to give us more time up front to really appreciate the pre-fame struggles a little bit more. But the music performance is explosive. The first 2 hours of the film, incredible. Straight Outta Compton gets an A- from me. Joe?
I think that I can't really follow it up too much. I agree with most of what you said, really. The best thing about the movie for me, besides the casting, was the sense of atmosphere. It was so genuine. Mm-hmm. It told you everything. It was very honest, not just about the music itself, but about these people and showing that they were very flawed and they got caught up in the glorified gangster lifestyle, but they still had other aspects to their personality that made them really passionate about their music and who they were. And I thought that each of the actors does a great job portraying these people and bringing them to life. I thought it was great. I did feel like I certainly was in the time, and hearing some of those tracks again, whether or not they were performed by the people or not, I don't really know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I suspect probably not, but I don't know.
I felt like some of them were a little different, but other ones I could tell were just absolutely recreations. Mm-hmm. But I did like that as well, and maybe I'm a little biased because I really do love NWA and a lot of Dr. Dre's stuff. I just believe anything associated with him is usually pretty good. I really love a lot of his stuff. Obviously a big Eminem fan. The only real negative I thought was kind of along the same lines. I wanted more because it was so well done. Yeah. And I did feel like towards the end of the movie, they kind of skipped over some stuff. So if they were going to focus on Cube's solo career or what happens to E, they need a little more of that. And I felt like it was continuing to build the drama, and it doesn't quite level up to everything that came before it. But even with the 2.5 hour runtime, I was never bored. Mm-hmm. I really did enjoy it. So I'm a little higher than you. I give it an A.
Okay. I teetered on it. Justin, what do you think?
Well, to take a little bit of a counterpoint, there's no denying the social injustices that Straight Outta Compton brings forth to the audience's attention, as well as their overall influence, what it actually meant to embrace First Amendment rights. But it's the fact that it tries to do so much that it only manages to accomplish some of it. Now, gentlemen, you're absolutely right. The performances are exceptional. Mm-hmm. I think O'Shea Jackson Jr. is far and away the standout, dead-on portrayal. But the problem resonates from the fact that no one manages to get that fleshed out. I felt like, you guys said the 2 hours. I personally thought it hit a little bit of a rut, I'd say about 90 minutes in, where they try to focus on the solo career of Ice Cube, and then they more or less take him out of the picture completely for about 30, 40 minutes before finding a way to get him back in again with this whole subplot about the Rodney King riots that doesn't really go anywhere.
I don't know know if that's true, because we see the rap battles that they had. We see him go to hit Priority Records headquarters and throw some shade there.
You see, their feud
He's definitely still involved.
It was a pretty big deal, was the breakup of NWA as well.
No. I mean, I get the fact that it's a breakup. I get that. And we do see that briefly. And I thought that was honestly one of the more compelling scenes in the movie, because you see just how close these people were, and then afterwards how far distance they were afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a great contrast. However, like I said, this movie's trying to do so much. Like I mentioned, the Rodney King riots, this whole police harassment subplot, which I understand where they're going with, but I also think is a little loaded, and the overall destruction and camaraderie of the musical artists, considered the most dangerous group according to the poster. And if that sounds like a lot for this movie, it's because it is. I like this movie. I thought it was well done for what it was, but I also feel like it ran on entirely too long. I leave with a B.
Well, I think that's sort of my issue with it, and why I couldn't give it that A, Joe, is because, like Justin said, it is tackling a lot of things. I guess for me, because I wanted more background on their rise to fame, I was fine with the runtime the way it was, but I wanted to see more up front and maybe more of an epilogue-based few scenes after they break up. I mean, we get it. The Chronic was a huge hit. Everybody knows that. Eazy-E died of AIDS. Everybody pretty much knows that. It gave us a couple of good emotional scenes.
But the ending's still kind of anticlimactic.
But yeah, I feel like maybe... Yeah, like the montage over the credits with like Eminem and all these people saying, how influential they were. Like, that was cool. I love that.
Yeah.
But maybe, incorporate that. Like, we know he sold Beats to Apple to $9 million or whatever. We kind of know all that. I don't think there needed to be scenes involved there, just more footnotes, so that we could get more of the upfront story. I mean, I guess it's not called the NWA story. It's called Straight Outta Compton. They're all from Compton. So I guess it's all of their story, and I understand that. But I think the meat of the movie is when the band is together.
And that's definitely true. The other big thing that kind of bothered me, it really only focuses on 3 of the members.
Wow.
Eazy-E, Dr. Dre, and Ice Cube.
To be fair, though...
All right, please.
Those are the only real members. I mean, yeah, everybody... I mean, MC Ren, fine. But, the DJ, okay. But it's sort of like making a Who documentary. You focus on Roger Daltrey. You focus on Pete Townsend. Yeah, Keith Moon was there. The other guy... Yeah,
All right.
They are the main 3 members. They wrote the songs. They produced the songs. They did the most recognizable raps.
Jimi Hendrix Experience.
There you go.
No
Jimi Hendrix.
No offense to those other 2 guys, but they were there.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it's a collaborative effort, and they're a collaborative band, but really...
There's a core.
It's the 3... there's a reason they broke out as solo artists.
That's fair.
They were undeniably the most talented.
Well, it's also a little different with a hip-hop group than with a rock band, where there's usually more of a balanced component, to be honest.
That's true, I guess.
I mean, you have other people in the background that can add to some tracks, but are they instrumental in the writing process of the music? You saw in the movie, not necessarily.
Yeah. Well, Justin, as we're talking here, I'm running through a list of, huge bands, and if there was a biopic on them, you would focus on 1 or 2 people. U2, you focus on Bono and The Edge. Bon Jovi and Sambora. Every band pretty much has those maybe 2 or 3 standouts.
No, I mean, I get that, but this is still a collaborative effort. It just makes you wonder the entire time, who were these other 2 people, and what on earth did these 3 guys see in them?
Friends.
They're friends, and I mean, I'm sure they wrote some of the raps as well. I mean,
Yeah.
We see the one scene where Ren's in the studio, doing the slam track on Cube, and after the group broke up and everything. I mean, I'm sure they all contributed, but nobody's going to see Straight Outta Compton to see what MC Ren's up to.
Well, no, that's
that's
a fair statement.
No offense to the man.
But I would actually like to come back to that statement you mentioned about them actually performing the raps. That was another thing that I'm not entirely sure if it's fair to call it an issue, but it did kind of bother me.
Okay.
Now, obviously the music in this movie is exceptional. However, they were incredibly inconsistent in terms of were they just playing the music already released, or were the actors actually performing them?
I know some of the songs were definitely just the actual tracks.
Yeah, I mean,
Some of them were.
certainly some of the concert scenes were just the actual tracks. Now, when they're in the
It's true.
studio, I don't know.
There are a couple times where you can tell like the main track is going down and you can hear them actually rapping, which I thought was really cool. And I'm just thinking the entire time, why not run with that? Do we need to hear this straight up album itself?
It might be cheaper and quicker just to run the track, though. Honestly.
You know, I don't know how much training is involved with that to get them up to speed. I mean, some people can naturally do it, and some people are better as actors. We saw that in Rock of Ages.
It's true.
I don't know if these guys can rap nearly as well as their counterparts that they're portraying. I don't know. So maybe it is easier to just run the track. And honestly, when they're at the live show, you know, it doesn't really matter. You play the track anyway because it's all overdubs at that point.
Right.
You know, when you're in the studio recording, obviously it's a little different. I will say, though, for all of the great likenesses they have, why was the actor that is portraying Snoop Dogg so off the mark? Did that bother you, Joe, being a hip-hop fan? Because everybody else was, like, straight up, like, wow, perfect likeness. Snoop came in and didn't look anything like him.
I wasn't sure who it was until he started talking. Like, he was doing the Snoop thing. So I was okay with it.
To be honest, it was a strange cameo.
I think it's a pretty important cameo, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it needed to be there.
I mean, they had
if they're
Pac,
gonna, yeah, if they're gonna do the Dre story post NWA,
they gotta mention.
You have to include Snoop.
You really do,
even if it's only for a scene.
Yeah, I mean,
he's
Justin. See, this is all before your time, but he was the reason that the Chronic sold.
Okay.
Snoop added because Dr. Dre was so
was
ingrained with NWA, like gangster
talent.
rap. Oh my God, stay away! But then Snoop came on, laid out some rhymes. The majority of Nothing But a G Thing, which was the breakout hit of the album, is Snoop.
Yep.
Okay. That's why that album was a success.
All right.
So you got to add him.
No, that's fair.
But find somebody that looks like him is my point.
That's true.
They looked unlike him enough, but they could. You're right. It's not the same standard. Maybe they figured if he's only in a couple scenes.
I guess the Pac was good though.
I thought it was
Pac.
Pac
was like. I know. I thought it was the hologram Pac.
I think he's still alive. I really do. I don't believe it.
That was eerie. I'll give you that one.
It's really so, weird.
I mean, you know, they got that for just one scene. Another great Giamatti manager performance.
Yeah, I'm slowly feeling he's going to start getting typecast from here on in.
I'm all right with that.
Another Oscar.
Manage everybody.
I mean.
All right. Well, that is. Straight Outta Compton. What a hit.
I thought it was good, yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, up next is Man From U.N.C.L.E. And Joe, you're going to tell us about that.
The Man From U.N.C.L.E. is an American action comedy spy film directed by Guy Ritchie. Remember him, Justin?
Once upon a time.
And co-written by Lionel Brigham and Ritchie himself. Based on the 1964 television series, which I've never seen, but I've heard apparently was pretty popular. The film stars Henry Cavill, that would be Superman, Armie Hammer, the Lone Ranger, Alicia Vikander of Ex Machina, and Hugh Grant from many things, doing his Hugh Grant stuff.
From Mickey Blue Eyes, most notably.
From me. But you know, you guys might know him Sense Sensibility and other stuff. In the early 1960s, CIA agent Napoleon Solo, possibly the coolest name ever, who is Henry Cavill, and a KGB operative, Ilya Kuryakin, played by Hammer, participate in a joint mission against a mysterious criminal organization, which is not Spectre. I mean, they're not Spectre, guys. I promise. They're basically Spectre. Which is working to proliferate nuclear weapons for their own purposes, or sell them. We don't really know. The two are going to have to put aside their differences to face down these foes. And I think this is a pretty cool little throwback to classic sci-fi movies. It seems like spy movies are kind of on their way back between Bourne and Mission Impossible, and of course James Bond still hitting. You know, I guess this is just a good market for that. And this movie hits a lot of the right notes. I think there's definitely a lot of fun here, some good dialogue. I think that Cavill steals the show. I think he just has a lot of great lines, a lot of great chemistry. I mean, I love the man. I think he's awesome. He needs to continue to rise, I think. Hammer does okay, I think, as well, to balance out. Probably one of his better performances. I mean, you know, I won't mention the other one because there might be some debate there, but I think he's fine. This movie has some pretty sleek design. I thought that the costumes were great. I thought that the era was great for the sets. Some of the music they used seemed very genuine. The action was not as sporadic as Ritchie's usually is, which kind of surprised me. It was actually a little more subdued. It took its time, and I think that did create some pacing issues that didn't always flow that well considering how much was going on. Kind of hits most of the cliches you would expect for this type of spy film. It doesn't really do anything new, but it is still fun, and it has some great lines and some decent action enough. I'll leave it with a B.
Okay. Yeah, I really like that they decided to keep this in the 60s, keep it era appropriate from the television show. We see so many TV turned into movies that update it to try to be more hip or whatever, and I like that they sort of kept it retro in that regard. I think Hammer and Cavill play off each other great, and you're absolutely right. I think Cavill just makes this movie. I will say it's my favorite performance of Hammer. out of the 5 or so that there are. I thought, his accent was good. But Richie really is what makes this movie exciting. The Richie style, but you're right, it's a little more toned down here than we've seen before.
Sleeker.
It's a little sleeker. I don't think it necessarily brings anything new to the table, but because of the strong performances, the retro feel and style, it does elevate it a little bit higher than recent by-the-numbers actioners like November Man or Run All Night. So for me, it's a C+.
Oh,
Justin?
wow. Whoa. Seemed like it would be higher than that.
I mean, it's still pretty basic.
Very, very basic.
It's very basic, but I did enjoy it. I mean...
What'd you give November Man? You kind of like November Man.
I gave that a C.
Yeah, that was mediocre.
I'm waiting for December
You know what?
Man.
You're right. This is significantly better than it. I'll give it a B minus.
Okay, I was like, I remember...
I'll give it a B minus. You're right. You're right.
No,
It's a little bit better than November Man,
okay,
for sure.
thank you.
Because I gave that M Run All Night about a C.
Like,
so
like, no. Oh, no.
I did enjoy this much better. Though.
Okay,
You're right.
All right. November Man.
Well, the iconic 60s show was a huge influence in the era of spy television. Ian Fleming helped bring it to life. He also came up with the name Napoleon Solo, ironically enough.
Cool.
But how does U.N.C.L.E. translate in the modern day? Not well.
Oh, my.
The biggest issue is all of the other spy franchises that are still going, such as James Bond, such as Mission Impossible, are finding ways to adapt it to a modern audience. This one clings to the past for dear life and hopes its audience will manage to pull that off. And it's also sort of to the fault of the fact that both Napoleon Solo and Ilya Kuryakin, even though I would argue Cavill and Hammer are really doing their best to sell the roles, they're really flat, one-dimensional characters.
Yeah.
Well, we don't learn a lot about them, that's for sure.
We learned a little.
And that's
Little
one
bit.
of the biggest issues I have with it. It's sort of why I like the fact that I saw the first Mission Impossible, but I have no burning desire to ever watch it again because all it did was try to emulate the show, the entire movie, which is fine, but it's not that fun to me. I'll take Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation any day of the week. And I'll admit it's not always a lost cause, but the storyline also leaves more than a little bit to desire. Though with Richie, it's all about trying to make it look cool, and it is. The sets are awesome, the costumes are great, but this is an attempt to try and emulate the spirit of a very influential show to the modern day for new audiences. It's got a long way to go, and I'm really hoping that Richie's going to find that same spirit that we found in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch, but I leave this one with a C-.
I'm surprised that we're on two completely different sides of the era issue. I like that it was set in the 60s just because that makes it unlike every other action movie that's out right now, but you found that boring, I guess.
No, it's not necessarily that
Or
it's
dated.
It's not even so much that it's dated, it's just if you're going to do that, what's going to work in the 60s is not going to work in the present day. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. It's partially because you have to be willing to adapt to the shortcomings of the show, which is we have these incredibly bland characters and these suspenseful adventures, which is fine for the 60s, but here we gotta find some way to make it work. Like, one of the big draws I would imagine helped with the show was, we had an American pairing up with a Russian in the Cold War era. That's not so shocking today.
No, and to me, that's why it sort of had to be set in the 60s. How would you set it today? The Americans facing off with the
Al-Qaeda member?
Al-Qaeda.
I'm not saying set it in modern day, but
Okay.
but find the shortcomings from the show and build it up. Add more character development. Give us a reason to actually get behind these characters. To be honest, I think Napoleon Solo is a scumbag.
I mean, I don't think either one of them was really
Painted as the
that.
best. You know?
Yeah, was really painted that well. They each love their country. I'll give them that.
Yeah.
The nicest thing I could
Patriotic.
The nicest thing I could say about Hammer's character is he's traumatized. That's about it. And he loves his dad. That is the sum total
But
of
they are both
likability.
patriotic. You can't deny that. Well, Joe, how did you feel about the era?
I liked it because you're right. It did differentiate it from the more modern setting. I think what Justin's trying to say is that the way they wrote the show is kind of how they did it now, which I'm not sure is entirely true. I think that they upped up some of the violence and some of the humor, I'm sure, is a little bit less tame than it was in the 60s. So I'm sure it's a little bit of an adaptation. You're right. I mean, maybe they could have made the characters a little more complicated. That's why I said it was pretty by the numbers. But I thought there was enough fun with the characters that you still could get behind them, I thought. They were entertaining to watch. I thought the two guys having to balance out their differences was fine.
Yeah, I was never bored.
Plus, I guess you could say, well,
Obviously.
the girls' plot was kind of the centerpiece of the movie, and they were just kind of supporting that, which has been done before. You don't necessarily have to have the two main guys as the most fleshed out characters. I think she was more interesting than they were, but
I agree.
That's fine, though. I mean, I'll tell you what, I would be interested in a sequel. I'd be fine if they want.
I'd be fine as well.
If they want to expand on
they want
these
to continue
ideas.
it.
Yeah, like learn more about them, maybe take some chances. That's fine. But I think for a template for a spy movie, this wasn't that bad. I've seen much worse.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, up next is The Gift, written and directed by actor Joel Edgerton, making his debut behind the lens here. The Gift sees young marrieds Simon and Robin, played by Jason Bateman and Rebecca Hall, moving from Chicago to an LA suburb where Simon grew up for his new job. While out getting things for their new house, Simon runs into a former schoolmate of his, Gordon, played by Edgerton, and the two soon set up a dinner. Simon starts feeling uncomfortable, though, as Gordon keeps popping by unannounced with gifts while Robin is home alone, and because, as Simon reveals, Gordon was called Gordo the Weirdo in school, and so he just doesn't trust him. The story unfolds its many layers slowly, and as such, The Gift becomes much more than your standard stalker-type film. The mystery element works, the creep factor is high, and it's remarkably unpretentious. It's not in your face. It allows the audience to appreciate what's happening that much more, I think. And perhaps the best part, though, for me, was that all three of the leads are dealing with this situation differently, and keeps everything so close to their vest that not even the audience is sure who's telling the truth as it goes on. There's a few plot holes for sure, but The Gift is smarter than most, and bravo to Edgerton for turning in a great script here. I give The Gift a B+. Justin?
Well, we see a bunch of celebrities turn directors now, but really hats off to Edgerton for crafting easily one of the most original and biting character studies in contemporary cinema. He gives us a character, or even characters, we're not entirely sure how to feel about, and pits them against the rest of the cast in a way that keeps us guessing about their true motivations and how it will all come together. Every time you expect it to zig, it zags. And it does so in a way that feels realistic and believable, and gives us more reason to keep getting invested in the story as it goes along. However, this is a film that's very easy to reveal too much in a review, but it's that mystery, and the conclusion for that matter, which is good, yet wildly disturbing, that makes the suspense of this film so compelling. I thought this was fantastic. I leave it with an A.
All right. Joe?
This was certainly a surprise for me, because before I had to view it, I was the guy making fun of it. Because
Yes, you were.
I believe it's another example yet again of horrible trailer for a much better movie. Because I'm sorry, the
trailers were very confusing.
Were pretty questionable. But no, I agree with you guys. This movie was an awesome thriller. I feel like it's definitely a throwback to a movie that would have definitely fit in place in the 90s, the early 2000s, when the psychological thrillers and the twists were really big. It seemed like it easily could have fit 10, 15 years ago. So, that's something that I automatically had a drive to be focused on and attracted to, because I love psychological thrillers in general. And I think this one definitely does rise above the standard stalker film. And it does take its time. It does have that slow burn, but the characters are so interesting, and they portray them in a way you don't expect. You'd think it would just kind of follow the same basic standards, but it doesn't. It shows some really interesting sides to everybody. And like Justin said, you really can't go into it, but a great Bateman performance, I think.
Yes.
In particular. You get to see him do something a little bit different, kind of expanding on his shtick, but that's all I'll say. Really, there are some hokey moments, though, that did kind of take me out of the movie a little bit. And I do agree there are one or two plot holes.
Very,
they're
there's one or two that are just, glaring, and what took me out.
To be honest, Justin, I was right there with you. Maybe higher. When I first came out, I'm like, oh, this is the best thriller I've seen in a long time. But I was thinking, best thing I've seen since... it was the best thing I'd seen since Prisoners, is what I was thinking. And I was thinking, wow, and along that vein. And then I started thinking about it, took a little walk, and I realized, wow, that didn't make sense. Wait, they did that? Oh, okay. So when you think about it, you kind of have to have that suspension of disbelief. And I think there is still an element of hokiness that doesn't quite elevate it to Silence of the Lambs level.
Right.
But I'm in between you guys. I leave it with an A-.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's certainly some hokey moments that are sort of kind of laughable a little bit.
A little bit.
That's the one issue I had that I couldn't quite give it A+ level is... I think there are a couple moments in the second act where Edgerton isn't entirely sure how he feels about his stuff, so he throws in a couple random jump scares.
Mm-hmm. Those jump scares were just silly.
Yeah, they were unnecessary. But I will say, Joe, I agree. When I first saw the trailer, I was like, I don't know how Bateman... Plot weirdness aside, and I didn't know what it was about, but I just saw Bateman being poised as this, like, thriller lead actor, and I was like...
What?
I don't see this happening at all. Like, this is Michael Bluth, and it didn't make sense, but I gotta say... He's got more range, I think, than he's given credit for, because...
Easily.
I think he did a really, really good job here.
Definitely.
It's the first really outside of comedy performance I've seen him give.
No,
You know? I mean, the switch was kind of dramatic, I guess, but he was still kind of doing his Jason Bateman thing.
He's still...
Juno, maybe? I don't know.
Juno's not a bad example, I guess. Yeah, that's true. He's definitely a little more out of his wheelhouse in Juno. That's a good example.
Yeah, I mean... It's still a performance in a comedy, but it's...
It is, but he is definitely not the comedic element of it.
Well, no.
That's for sure. But no, I thought he pulled it off great. Edgerton, obviously, we've seen him do a wide variety of things.
Oh, yeah.
And Rebecca Hall is about the first movie I've seen her in that I actually enjoyed.
Well, hey, you know, she was actually basically the center of the movie, though. So
I loved her character.
She was a very good character. I did actually care about.
And she added a lot to it, I think.
And I think by the end, you actually see her progress through the arc based on the reactions, and it goes a direction you wouldn't expect either.
Well, because
Definitely.
I think she's the one, again, without revealing too much, I think she's the one that the audience most can relate with, because she also doesn't really know what's going on.
Exactly.
That's true.
You know, these guys have a history because of the high school stuff. Mm-hmm. But she's sort of following along as the audience does, not exactly knowing who to trust.
Yeah, I think she serves as a really interesting middle ground with them. And I think because of that, it leads to a lot of interesting complications with her character. Because she's not necessarily on the same level as those two, but it is interesting watching her sort of come into the know about how everything coincides.
Well, one thing I learned from this film is that if Simon says something, it doesn't always necessarily go.
No, we definitely learned that. And you wanted this movie to be called Simon Says.
Well, because that was the main hook of the trailer. Simon Says snap, change scene, man.
At this point, would you say that's an appropriate title? I don't think it is.
No, it is not now, but it could.
Now that you've seen.
It really literally could have been like some killer that could be Simon Says, and that would be like the whole theme, and that would have been a much worse movie.
Wouldn't that have been a much more generic movie?
But that's how it was being advertised as this generic, stupid horror movie, and it's just like cheesy. And I think that was,
to be honest, it was a terrible trailer, but
it was hilarious.
I feel like that was the only way they could market it without giving massive spoilers.
And also, I think more people would be likely to see it if they thought it was more generic, because those movies attract a lot of people. Just something you can watch on a Friday night.
Look at the Gallows. Gallows opened at $10 million, and it's,
it's the Gallows.
Basic thing.
But I think the thing is, people went into this one and they were scared on a different level. It was a better quality horror thriller than they are used to.
Yeah,
which is good.
Prisoners was not a bad example too.
Well, it was the last successful thriller I could think of.
Well, you liked Enemy a lot as well.
Enemy is a little more on the surreal fantasy side, so
I guess that's true.
It's on the line. But that's Enemy's quite good as well.
I give it to Prisoners more for the mystery element. I mean, I have a hard time calling this one a horror film because it's not necessarily scary. It's suspenseful.
No, it's a thriller for sure.
Absolutely.
It's not a horror movie.
It's a thriller, but there are certainly some horror elements. I mean, the jump scares, obviously.
Yeah, which did not need to be there, but that's irrelevant.
But I think that might have gotten mixed in with the marketing, because you could tell there were some aspects that seemed more like a bordering on, like, is this going to be a slasher movie with this guy coming in during the house? Like, there's some elements there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this one, it's much more psychologically driven, I would argue.
Psychological thriller, I think, works.
Yeah. All right, well, up next we have the latest from Woody Allen. That's Irrational Man, and that's going to be with Justin.
Please tell me if it's rational, or is it irrational? Please.
In his latest directorial effort, Woody Allen spins a story about Abe, played by Joaquin Phoenix, a philosophy professor in an existential crisis. However, when Abe finds himself persuaded by one of his students named Jill, played by Emma Stone, with whom he's having a romantic relationship, to kill a judge, Abe begins to find a new lease on life, despite a partial toll on his conscience. I guess, listeners, we should have seen this coming. Blue Jasmine had a great performance from Blanchett, Magic in the Moonlight was fun, but Irrational Man is 90 minutes of Woody Allen spewing existentialism in the densest way possible, and expecting moviegoers to simply accept it. And I'm not going to lie, for the first 30 minutes or so, there's some hints at an interesting concept. It's a little pretentious, but I was kind of on board. Hearing Phoenix sort of be in this cynicism, trying to understand his mindset, how he got that way, why he's that way, and how he might change over the course of his arc. Instead, it just starts off pretentious, gets dark, and doesn't really recover. I thought the noirish voiceovers from nearly everybody involved was ridiculous. I thought the attempt at partial dark comedy later on was beyond disturbing. And by the end of it, I just couldn't really be on anyone's side. I thought they were all horrible human beings. In the end, it's just another case of maybe if Alan had more time than just a year, this might have been okay. But instead, he churned it out as fast as he could, and this is what we got. I leave it with a D.
Well, this is the problem with Woody Allen cranking out a movie every year like clockwork, is that whether it's a good movie or not, he does it. And this year in particular was a little more rushed for him because he made that deal with, I believe it was Amazon.
Correct.
And he's, doing a TV show now for them, so he's in over his head with that. He's got this script for a half-baked movie. I do think there's quite a few interesting philosophical questions brought up, but then nothing is really done with any of them. And you're right, Justin. It's Woody Allen, so of course it's pretentious. I go into his movies kind of expecting that at this point. But aside from that, even for Woody Allen, the score is really irritating. I know Joe,
oh my gosh,
Joe
yes.
hates the jazz of the Woody Allen. At least with most of his movies, there's a different song every time. This was the same song played for an hour and a half straight. It was just like, oh, we get it. I thought some of the performances were okay. Phoenix particularly seemed like he was phoning it in to me. I know I'm not his biggest fan anyway, but I thought Emma Stone's character was all right. Of anybody, you couldn't even get behind her, Justin?
No, I thought she was horrible. She convinced him to do the act in the beginning, and then it's...
No, she didn't.
Basically, it's like, oh yeah, the world would be a better place without...
That's just two people having a larf and drinking, and, she didn't actually want him to do it.
She's kind of okay afterwards with it.
She goes along with it, though.
She totally goes along with it.
I don't think
Hook,
she did
line,
at all.
and sinker.
When she found out, she was horrified.
Was she?
Not really.
Yes.
It was more like, oh, he's dead. Cool.
No, but when she found out he was the one that did it, she was horrified. Well, it worked a little bit better for me than it did for you, I guess. It's a C- for me. Joe?
This movie sucks.
Not great.
I'm just going to lead with that. Literally, yes, there were some interesting ideas. I thought that some of the lectures in the classroom were potentially interesting. I thought that I like the conversations. Woody Allen can have a good conversation. He's kind of, he can explore some good ideas. That's what he's known for. And I agree at the beginning. I thought that was interesting. I thought the murder could have been interesting, but like you said, there's no real plot to this movie. Nothing really happens. It's just kind of a lot of nothing, random murder, more nothing, and then more murder. And then at the end of the movie, you feel like you just wasted your time. Like, maybe that was the point that he was going for. It's just a big waste of time. And that's what the whole movie boils up to. I do think the performances were okay, and the plot had some potential early on, really did. But really, for like the last hour of this movie, I was pretty much spacing out. I couldn't even focus. It was too...
It just goes all over the place.
It was just all over the place, and it was just the same thing. Like, literally, Joaquin Phoenix's character would have the same conversation in his head about 5 times. And I'm like, We've seen this scene already several times.
And his voiceovers were terrible, Justin.
And there was a moment. There was a moment with those voiceovers where it cuts from Joaquin Phoenix's long monologue to Emma Stone for 2 lines of a monologue, and then directly to another scene. It was the most pointless 2 minutes of a movie I've ever seen.
Wow.
But I'm between you guys. I give it a D+.
Is that right? It sounded like an F was coming.
No, because, like I said, the beginning was all right. The performances were good. I'm trying to give it the benefit of doubt. I really am. But the movie sucked.
It's not a good movie. Let's just be...
I mean, I could fail it, but I don't want to do that.
I would say it's not a good movie. You're right, Justin. But I would say it's an okay movie. I think it brings up some interesting points. It just does nothing with them.
Which is pretty bad when you can't entertain your audience for 90 minutes.
No, and that is my problem with this let's annually do a movie, whether it's good or not, philosophy that Woody has, because you're right, Justin. If he had spent another year on this, maybe it would have been
A better
movie. But between this and then his TV show, I'm sure he was like, "Well, I got to put one out this year.
What do we got?
I'm just here. We go. Call up my buddies. Emma Stone and has Joaquin done one before?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, this is the second or third one from Stone. Was she in Midnight in Paris or was that McAdams?
That was McAdams.
All right. Still, he has his go-tos.
Well, yeah, she's his go-to for now.
And she's his go-to for now, and then when she turns about 30, she's done, and then we get, Jennifer Lawrence or somebody else that...
Probably, actually.
Chloe Grace Moretz.
Yeah, Chloe, that's probably more likely. Chloe Grace Moretz.
Yeah, because, yeah.
And then after that, Quvenzhané Wallace, and then...
Oh, jeez.
And then
Is he be
Shiloh Pitt, or is that the girl Pitt? One of whatever Angelina Brad's young daughter is, or Suri Cruise or something.
Oh no,
he'll be dead by the time she's of age. But the point is, that this movie's okay, but not good. I'm surprised about your D+ after that volatile review.
Because
I am too a little bit.
I'm trying to be fair. Okay,
right.
I'm trying to be fair and as impartial as I can be as a film critic on this little show.
Look, I do think some of the conversations could have been interesting.
Look, the thing that frustrates
A lot of them
me.
could have been.
The thing that frustrates me though is that there's so much potential. I liked what this movie could have been.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, enough from Woody Allen. Let's go back to the Jurassic now with our home media moment, or you might also know it as Dino Time, if you know it at all, because that's how it was originally supposed to be released. It focuses on Ernie Fitzpatrick, voiced by Pamela Adlon, a rebellious young boy who lives in Terra Dino with his sister Julia, voiced by Tara Strong, and his best friend Max, voiced by Yuri Lowenthal. Ernie and Max sneak into a local dinosaur museum, and when Julia rats them out, Max's mom punishes him to help his inventor father in the garage. Ernie comes over to marvel at Max's father's time machine, and Julie is there too so she can spy on them. And while the three are fighting, they accidentally activate the machine and get sent back 65 million years ago. A friendly T-Rex takes them in as her own children, and the kids try and survive in the age of dinosaurs while also trying to get home. Jane Lynch, Melanie Griffith, and Rob Schneider also have voice roles. Originally slated for release in December of 2012 theatrically, and then shelved to finally premiere in the US on DVD just recently, Back to the Jurassic, or Dino Time, is one more sad attempt at entertainment from Clarius Entertainment. This is the studio that has yet to release something that gets higher than a D+ from any of us on the show. Legends of Oz, Dorothy's Return, And So It Goes, and Before I Go to Sleep. The animation is ugly, the script is not funny, and the movie on the whole is just not entertaining. That all being said, I suppose you could prop your kids up in front of something worse on a rainy weekend, and the lessons here aren't terrible, but this movie is just a snooze. I leave it with a D. Justin?
At least we now know why this disappeared for so many years.
Yeah, good old Clarius.
This is a dumber than dumb family film with a protagonist I spent the majority of the film hoping would get eaten. But alas, he did not. However, the film...
Spoilers. The little boy doesn't get eaten by the
They want to know if he
dinosaurs.
gets eaten, Justin. Come on.
Sorry, there's no main character murder in this movie. Sorry.
Man, not my little family film? Come on.
However, the film is kind of entertaining in a guilty pleasure kind of way that I could see kids getting into despite the stiff animation, abysmal voice acting, and just irritating storyline. I'd leave with a D-.
All right, Joe?
First, I want to ask, Dan, why were you so hell-bent on reviewing this one?
Because when this was originally supposed to come out in theaters, I had not seen a trailer or anything. It ran apparently in front of Hotel Transylvania before being pulled. But we had this big standee at the theater with these cute little kids on it, and they were going to go to play with dinosaurs. I thought, oh, that looks really cute.
Yeah.
And then I kept waiting for it to come out, even on DVD, and it never did. And then here we are 3.5 years later, and it finally shows the light of day.
As Back to the Jurassic.
Yeah, I thought we got to review this thing at this point.
Wow, so you are anticipating this one.
If I had known, I'll tell you what, if I had known, though, it was Clarius Entertainment, I probably would have saved us all the trouble and said, just forget it.
Yeah.
Well,
honest mistake.
To be honest, but...
Well, they're not going to break the streak with me.
No.
Okay, I mean, I think that, like, I wanted to say this movie was... It's like, not the bottom of the barrel for family entertainment, but it's definitely pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
I mean... The animation was like mediocre. I think the worst thing about it was
thought it was bad.
the face animation.
Yes.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like honestly, overall, it was like it's okay, but it's the faces.
It reminded me of like Sid's face in Toy Story, like that kind of prehistoric
Seemed a bit
CGI
outdated.
face structure.
I was thinking now if this was like maybe something you'd see on TV, like a TV movie, that's more along the lines of what you'd expect.
Yeah.
For like
Or a classic direct-to-DVD like knockoff movie.
knockoff
Right.
movie, like for something maybe that they were thinking The Good Dinosaur a little
Right.
ahead of time, perhaps.
But the fact that this was supposed to be a theatrical release is beyond
Horrifying.
yeah, this should
Yeah.
not have been theatrical, so it's a good idea they pulled it for that at least.
Yes.
I mean, like you said, the messages are okay. I think that kids might be entertained by it. They're not going to remember it. I doubt it's going to be too deeply ingrained in the childhood the most, but I can't say I was too bored watching it. I kind of agree with Justin. There's a little bit of a guilty pleasure element here. I thought the voice acting was okay, actually. I mean,
I thought it was all right. Yeah,
like
I
the-
didn't have a problem with
It's
it.
pretty bad.
I thought it was okay. It had one thing I liked about the movie. I will say one positive is that there was some energy. I did feel some energy from the performances. So they were trying to do what they could with this very limited storyline. I'm a little above you guys. I give it a D+.
Ooh, okay.
It's right there with Irrational.
But I was gonna say, yeah, wow. No, this isn't good. But I guess I feel like in this age of like on demand and Blu-rays and DVDs, I mean, you could give your kids 500 better choices
Easily.
than Back to the Jurassic. You know, there's just no reason for it to
B.
really
Exist.
exist. Yeah, I mean, to put it bluntly,
But so many people worked on it, Dan. Don't you think it deserves to be watched?
no, I don't. I don't. Listen, I honestly, look, I'm all for employment. I think Clarion should just shut their doors. I mean, they haven't given us anything even remotely memorable or good.
Hey, I'm still vengeful about Legends of Oz, so I'll
Legends of Oz was the biggest offender because it desecrates the Wizard of Oz, but And So It Goes was also terrible.
yeah.
You know,
That was,
I think I'm the only one on the show that actually failed it, but it was bad.
it's still the least bad thing I think I've seen from them, but it's still terrible on nearly every level.
Yeah, I don't know. They gotta go back to the drawing board and come up with some better scripts or something.
They just gotta stop being a cash grab, I think.
Yeah, well, I guess they must be making money.
But yeah, that's what I was going to ask about a cash grab, Justin. I don't. Do these things make any money?
They're most
I mean, they're
successful
made on a
films.
shoestring budget, I would imagine, most of them,
Yeah,
so
true.
And
they
So It
don't
Goes
take much.
probably wasn't though. I mean, you probably
Douglas.
had to pay Michael Douglas and Diane Keaton a pretty penny,
Decent, yeah.
Most of them.
maybe $1 million a piece or something. Not huge, but
I was gonna say that's still chump change compared to like Jurassic World and Ant-Man. So
But how much do these people have?
Now you're just comparing apples to oranges. Yes, obviously, And So It Goes didn't have a $200 million budget. You got me there.
well, my point
But I
being,
mean-
still, even if it was that, most studios aren't batting an eyelash over like a couple $1 million to make a movie.
They should be.
But an upstart studio with 0 hits to their name, I don't know.
Do you know if they're a branch off by any chance?
They must be owned by somebody that's fronting it, or else it's like that guy that owns Oogie Loves, and he was like a self-made millionaire, so he made Oogie Loves by himself.
I
It might
see.
be something like that, I guess, but I don't know, man. It's whoever's doing it, they're not doing the world favors with these movies.
No.
All right, well, let's move on here. We've got our top 5, and that is music biopics in honor, of course, of Straight Outta Compton. We've done a few of these recently. In the last year or so, there's been maybe 3 or 4 of them that we've reviewed, some favorably and some not so much. Joe, why don't we start with you on the top 5 music biopics?
Well, my number 5 is so low on the list because I think it is definitely a biopic, but in the most fictional sense of the word, and that would be 8 Mile, because it is basically, I mean, I think Eminem does a great performance here, basically, of this fictionalized version of himself, and obviously modeled by a lot of lyrics from his songs. Just a really great movie that I talk about all the time, so I won't continue with that one anymore.
I think we did say that does count as a biopic. I didn't put it on mine just because he's not playing Eminem, which bothers me.
he is,
but he
though.
is himself. It's true.
Most people would consider it.
Yeah, I
It's-
think most people would consider it. Yeah.
And everything but name,
Yeah.
really. Number 4 would be Amadeus. It's a pretty good look at one of the greatest composers of all time. I thought there's some good performances here. And you also have the F. Murray Abrams, always good
Yeah.
as a supporting there.
From our Oscar A to Z list.
Yeah, from a while back, actually. So definitely one to check out. It's a classic if you guys haven't seen it. Number 3 would be Ray. It's definitely, I would say, Jamie Foxx's best performance so far. Just really powerful story. Great look at this man who, honestly, before the film, I don't think I knew that much about his personal life, but I think everybody knows. Just fantastic. And my number 2 would be Straight Outta Compton.
Wow.
I actually really enjoyed this movie. I did. I thought it was an amazing film. I really did. Not too many issues.
Very good.
But not the best.
Not the best. All right, Justin, what do you got?
Number 5, Behind the Candelabra. I think this is a really fascinating portrayal of a musician that really does not only bring forth a lot of spectacle, but also adds a lot to the nature of the character as a whole. Michael Douglas and Matt Damon play out for each other almost spot on, and even though it's told from Damon's perspective, I think it's still very much a Michael Douglas film, and I really do appreciate it for that.
Yeah, it was a good one. I forgot about that. Mm-hmm. Good choice.
Number 4 is one from this year, and that is Love and Mercy. I thought it was a really bold choice to tell us from both dual perspectives of Dano and Cusack. It adds a lot of perspective in terms of how one aspect of a person's life can lead into the other, and yet it still adds the component of a Beach Boys movie. I'll admit it's not front and center, which is why it's a little bit lower on the list, but it's still a pretty solid biopic. Number 3, Walk the Line. I'm not the world's biggest country music fan, but
well, Johnny Cash kind of transcends that.
Johnny Cash is Johnny Cash. There's no denying that. He was a great musician, and Joaquin Phoenix brings him to life beautifully. And obviously, Reese Witherspoon is no slouch herself.
Of course. Oscar winning.
Lest I forget. Thank you. And my number 2, Amadeus. I love this movie strictly for the perspective that it's a Mozart movie, but it's told from the villain's perspective, who's almost got a guilty conscience about it. It's well acted. I think for its entire running time, if you watch the 2.5-hour theatrical cut or the 3-hour director's cut, neither one is boring. It's a really engrossing movie.
Yeah, we watched the 3-hour cut of Amadeus for the show.
That's true.
Which did bore me a little bit, so you won't find that one on my list. But I do have an honorable mention, and it's a sort of out-of-the-box choice, because it doesn't really focus on the music portion, but it is a biopic, and that is Saving Mr. Banks, which, of course, focuses on the Mary Poppins story, but at the center is the Sherman Brothers and their music and all of that. So you can't really call it a music biopic, but
it's a big portion.
Yeah, it's a pretty big portion of the story. So, number 5 for me is What's Love Got to Do with It? Now, as a movie itself, this is just a great piece of cinema. Really fantastic acting here. Obviously, Lawrence Fishburne, Angela Bassett, great performers, and they play very well as Ike and Tina Turner. However, as somebody who read the book before the movie takes a lot of liberties of things that didn't really happen. They sort of invent a best friend that didn't exist, and so I have a few problems with it for that as a music biopic. But as a film, it is pretty great. Number 4 is Straight Outta Compton. Obviously, we just talked about that earlier, so I don't need to go into too much detail there, but I do think this will go down as one of the great music biopics, of the last decade or so. Number 3 for me is Love and Mercy. I really do appreciate how they gave us 2 completely different perspectives on the same person, played by 2 different actors. I feel like we see a lot of run-of-the-mill music biopics
Absolutely.
in this day and age, which is another reason I really like Straight Outta Compton. It's something a little bit, left of center. They did something more interesting with it than your typical Jersey Boys, let's say. So Love and Mercy, great number 3 there. And my number 2 is Walk the Line. This is, for me, the Joaquin Phoenix performance to beat. I guess I still have to watch Gladiator, Justin.
Yeah.
But he is obviously great as Johnny Cash. Here's another one where I read the book a couple of years, actually, before the movie came out. And it does stick fairly close to the story as told by Cash, by Johnny Cash. So I do have to give it credit for that. And Reese Witherspoon's Oscar turn is fantastic. She is a great June Carter Cash, and I think really helps the movie. So that's my number 2.
It's good.
Joe, what is your number 1?
What do you think my number 1 is?
I don't know at this point. Love and Mercy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Love and Mercy I just thought was amazing.
So great.
It was just such a good performance from Cusack, which I think is just so very rare these days, but just really a standout. And I think what Justin said about Dano as well, just completely blowing it out of the water as well.
Mm-hmm.
Really a fantastic movie about a very interesting man with a lot of great talent from one of my favorite bands of all time, the Beach Boys.
That's right.
Really, really enjoyed it, and I think it is one of my favorite films of the year so far. So
awesome.
Might be showing up later, depending on how awesome Oscar season is. You never know.
True.
Justin thinks there'll be a lot.
Justin, what's your number 1?
Well, my number one is Ray. Now, I feel like with music biopics, as well as just biopics in general, we only seem to get two versions of it. We get one version of a biopic that tells the entire story of a person, or we get one that focuses on a various segment. I think Ray is one of the few contemporary examples of a biopic trying to tackle the entire time span of a legacy and doing it seamlessly. I feel like its entire running time, we really see how much Fox committed to this character. The music's great. The atmosphere is amazing. The outside aspects influencing the music I thought was incredible. I just thought this was a fantastic music biopic.
Yeah, well, I agree. That's my number one as well. I think Jamie Foxx just knocks it out of the park. We said this on our recent top 5 of who we would give an Oscar to that has not won one yet. And I had a couple of good people that I could have given it to, but that was the year Jamie Foxx played Ray, and I said, can't do it. This is one of the great performances of our time, I feel like. I mean, he embodies this guy, a guy that really pretty much everyone, I would say maybe above the age of 20, knew, how he sounded, how he looked, everything, his mannerisms, and Jamie Foxx hit it to the T. And it's a movie that really rose him into the A-list. I mean, it just shot him. He was known before. He'd done a few movies here and there, some television, the Jamie Foxx sitcom.
But then we started taking him seriously.
Yeah, I mean, this was one movie, and it changed his entire life. It gave him a music career, for one thing, because people realized, he can also sing. So he's had a couple of hits that way, and then he's had some great movie roles as well. So yeah, really, really a great biopic. All right, well, good top 5s, and next we move into our double feature of older films. And first up is the old classic, and that was Justin's pick for this week, Big Fish.
Billy Crudup plays William Bloom, a straightforward son living in the shadows of his father, Ed Bloom, played by Albert Finney, and his larger-than-life collisions of fact and fantasy with his storytelling. Years pass and the two become estranged until Will receives word that his father is dying, and he, as well as the rest of his friends, start to recall the wildly enticing stories he spun for all those years, played by Ewan McGregor as his younger self. Jessica Lange, Helena Bonham Carter, and Steve Buscemi, in a brief but memorable role, also star. Now, for those who don't know...
No love for DeVito.
I was going to say, when you mention DeVito... Come on, pretty integral to the plot, Justin.
And lest we forget Danny DeVito, Joe. For those who don't know, we've just hit our 2 years of working on Film Fanatics, and I thought this would be a fun throwback to our original episode. Not to mention, as I'm approaching my final semester of graduate school, I felt this was a good one to run for a little creative inspiration on my part. Big Fish I often consider a different shade of Burton, which I like. But yet, he's never quite managed to pull off again. I think it's a really nice blend of his quirkiness, but there's still a story there. Which I feel like he needs to get back to in some way, but I'm not sure how he can. It's not quite as gothic, but because of that, I feel like it's also led to its initial lack of discussion among moviegoers, otherwise known as what Joe and I like to call perditioning. But I feel like in that regard, it really does have a unique perspective. And I think it's a lot of fun seeing it all unfold and trying to wonder what is real and what isn't. How much is being played in front of us for entertainment. However, I do think there are a few scenes where the subjective lens gets a bit too over the top, particularly during a lengthy scene set during World War II. But Big Fish is a world that lives within fact and fiction that I think is incredible. And it's one that I've always loved coming back to and continue to expand my love of storytelling just overall. I leave with an A.
All right, Joe, let's go to you next for Big Fish.
Yeah, I agree. This is definitely Burton-y, but a different type of Burton. It's got some of his quirkiness, but with less of the whole goth tropes that he's best known for. I think that's pretty much dominated his career. And I think that shows that he has some variety in what he can do while still keeping that sense of magic. And the movie really is, I think, a celebration of storytelling in general and just myths and legends, as well as this pretty personal story about a man and his father, and just trying to understand the generations and trying to understand this man and the mystery of his life with the fact and the fiction. And I think that the actual grounded, real scenes are just as good as the mystical ones. I think, in fact, in some ways, I think they're better. I think it shows potential for what Burton can do in just a straight dramatic setting without the quirkiness. Really, it's pretty cool, actually. We need more of that. And I think that it runs pretty well. I do think some of the quirkiness kind of, maybe it goes a little over the top, like Justin said at some points. I'm not sure if it always flows perfectly, but I've always thought it was a wonderful film. I've never had any real major issues with it. Love most of the sequences. It's got some great cast members. I'm right there with you, Justin. I give it an A as well.
Well, I like Alice in Wonderland and Charlie the Chocolate Factory, I think, better than most. But
Alice is okay.
Alice is all right. They're both like pretty good, but Big Fish is clearly the last great Burton film.
Pretty much, yeah.
You know,
Definitely.
It's visually maybe the greatest thing he's ever done. The story is unparalleled. The imagination of this movie, it's so great. You know, part tall tale, part father-son bonding story, part romance. To me, it's McGregor's finest performance. I think he just kills it here. And each segment is as strong as the last, which I think is a really important thing for films like these that are sort of told in more vignette-based, narratives. You want something where it never drags when you're like, okay, sometimes you want a scene to last longer because you're infatuated with, the characters in it. But, when it goes to the next scene, you're never like, okay, this is like half as good as the scene before it. No. Every new tale that we hear of this guy's story is as strong as the one before it. I honestly really don't have anything negative to say about it. I guess it does get a little heavy-handed maybe with the father-son stuff. Okay, it's a little quirky. It's Tim Burton. I'm good with that. For me, Big Fish is an A+. Wow. For a long time, Scissorhands was in my top 25 of all time. Beetlejuice, I believe, probably still would be. Beetlejuice is more of a childhood nostalgia favorite movie kind of thing. This is, for my money, the quote-unquote best. Maybe not my personal favorite. I'll give it to Beetlejuice for nostalgia, but this is his best movie, I think. Now, Justin, I know you would probably say Ed Wood.
Ed Wood, but this is definitely a close second.
I mean, visually, though, don't you think? I mean, the guy has sort of made a career on these quirky, weird visuals, but I guess because it's in this tall tale setting, it's maybe not more quote-unquote believable, but, like, it just goes better with the story. Like, it makes sense.
It complements it.
It complements it, exactly. Like, a lot of his... I mean, I guess most of his movies don't take place in the traditional world. Even a movie like Dark Shadows,
Well, no.
where it is in the real world, well, okay, but it's not because there's a vampire at the dinner table, But I guess most of his don't take place in the real world. But this one does, but also kind of doesn't. And I think that's, pretty cool. It's not something we see every day from Burton. It's either kind of one or the other.
Or it's Batman.
Or it's Batman, which takes place in its own contained Batman world.
But I feel like that also gives us an interesting perspective. Burton can have his cake and eat it too. It's just a matter of he's got to balance it out.
You're right, and I think, and again, I like these movies probably more than most. But I would say, Justin, for you, maybe the problem with the last decade of Burton movies is that they don't ever find that balance.
They really don't.
Most of them are either just real quirky, or Planet of the Apes, or whatever.
Man, no. But what do you guys think about Sweeney Todd? That was a pretty well received one.
I actually didn't see it.
I liked it,
like
but it
that
was
one though.
Because I thought that one was. I mean, it was more traditional Burton, but it wasn't like over the top goofy, like giving into all the tropes.
In a way, it is and it isn't. It's a very different Burton.
It's like a more serious Burton, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's
serious.
Did you like that though, Justin?
Yes, I did really like Sweeney Todd. I thought it was one of the better musicals.
That's probably the one exception in this decade. I
think.
I thought that was pretty good. Though I never ran out to see it again, so that should tell you.
Did either of you guys get to see this in theaters?
Big Fish, no, I didn't. I only got it on DVD.
Okay.
I heard about it and got it.
In theaters, it really popped. I mean, those visuals, like that when he goes like to the poppy fields and stuff.
How about this? Big Fish 3D re-release.
I would be so down for that.
How about that?
I would be down for that. 15th anniversary.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
A couple of years from now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, very good old classic, Justin. Always good to throw an A+ into the mix there.
Thank you.
And let's close our show with our Oscar A to Z. That is Bad Day at Black Rock. This is a 1955 film that earned 3 nominations: Best Actor for Spencer Tracy, and also Best Director and Best Screenplay. Joe?
Well, the Bad Day at Black Rock is from CinemaScope, so it's not as good as Technicolor, but still nice. It's a thriller film, as you said, from Sturgis, and it's starring Spencer Tracy and Robert Ryan, and I think, is it Ernest Borgnine who's in here?
Ernest Borgnine,
Yes.
yeah,
Well,
classic.
Some big people here, and it combines elements of westerns, but I think it's more of a film noir, really. And there's some other people here as well. It takes place just after World War II, in late 1945. There's this one-armed man named John McCready, who's played by Tracy. He gets off this passenger train in this isolated desert hamlet of Black Rock. It is the first time in 4 years that the train has stopped there, which I found hard to believe. But then again, it is in the middle of nowhere, and it's not a very nice place, so I don't know. I think it was just.
How do they get supplies though? I
That's
didn't
true.
understand that part.
I
but...
guess well, they said that they were gonna like
People coming to town.
there was some land that they could use to farm. Yeah, I thought that part was just trying to be over dramatic, but maybe it was exaggerating. McCready is looking for a man named Komoko, but the few residents of the town are very, very hostile to him, and McCready must move past this to find Komoko, even though there might be a darker underbelly in the town that could put his life in danger. Now, I will say this: when the movie started, it really kind of creates this air of isolation, which is good. But it really, really takes its time. And I think that's one of the few drawbacks of the movie is it does take a while to get going. I can appreciate slowness, but it just seems like it's more of the same. But then things start actually happening, and you find out some of the intrigue and mystery of what's going on, what McCready's doing there, and trying to figure out how he's going to get out of the situation. And the situation does keep building and building more intense from there. And it actually becomes a pretty engaging thriller. It was actually quite the surprise. I thought the performances were good. I thought the story was very ahead of its time. Not to reveal anything, but I think this is the first time, this is the earliest film I've seen that actually did blatantly make racism a main part of the plot, actually.
Yeah, it's true.
And
Good point.
I thought that was pretty ahead of its time there, and it really, really focused on some pretty strong themes there. A lot of inner conflict with the individuals for this crime thriller. Really, really ahead of its time, I think, thematically. And it had that with some great performances and some pretty brutal action scenes towards the end. Very surprising. I liked this one quite a bit. I mean, if it wasn't for that slow half hour at the beginning, which was honestly kind of boring, it might be higher. But I leave this one with an A-.
Yeah, boy, the beginning of this movie, man.
Woo.
The plotting script takes so long to get moving. Once something finally does happen, it's interesting. Kind of kickstarts the whole movie, really. But, is it enough, though, to get on board with the rest of the movie? I would say for the most part it is, but it does take a long time to get there. The acting's good. It is shot very well. It's very atmospheric. You really do feel like you're a part of this sort of podunk town or whatever. So I can see the nominations for Tracy and the director. But yeah, the color, they use Eastman color instead of Technicolor. It looks washed out. You can kind of tell that that's a little bit of a lower budget one. And the action really is fairly non-existent until about halfway through the movie. I do admit there's some interesting action scenes at the end, but the drama I found mostly boring. I give it a B-.
Oh, wow.
Justin?
Well, for me, this has really been probably our biggest hot streak for Oscar-nominated films
Justin loved it.
in this regard.
A+.
I think Western and Noir are two very different genres, and yet both, I think, are trying to achieve the same thing. They're trying to really build up these characters and really give a compelling story, but let the story unfold on their own time. Obviously, it's not going to be the biggest draw, but it's necessary to really bring it to life and keep it unfolding at their own rate. And I really do appreciate the synergy that it pulls off in combining the two. I'm not gonna deny the fact, Dan, that it takes a bit to get going. Not entirely uncommon with either genre, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
No, I suppose you're right about that.
But I mean, but this ultimately paves the way for a legitimate suspense thriller with some great action, particularly in the climax, and a great performance from Spencer Tracy as the lead. I thought this was really well written, really well shot. I love the opening scene with a passion. And I really do appreciate the fact that they're taking time to sort of create the mystery with these characters. Who knows what, when, and how that's going to influence how everything plays out. And also add a positive side to searching for this Japanese man, which leads to one of the more memorable action sequences in the entire film.
Well, that's when it picked up for me.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure.
And for that, I got to give it an A. I think it's incredibly ahead of its time.
Wow. I mean, I might be a little higher if the first 40 minutes wasn't so dreadfully boring.
But at the same time, you've openly admitted you're not a big fan of Westerns.
No, Western is a genre that I have tried to get behind so many times.
It's the genre.
And it's not my favorite. I want to like it.
It's
it's Americana. It's classic.
There's some good ones you could probably get behind, I'm sure.
I was going to say...
I liked the True Grit remake.
True Grit, Tombstone, I mean...
Yeah, I like Tombstone as well.
Yeah.
I like some of them.
There are some that are very engaging, actually. Searchers is obviously considered a classic.
All right, but you've both admitted that the first at least half hour of this movie is pretty boring. So imagine... Joe loves Westerns. So imagine somebody that does not like Westerns.
I like some Westerns.
It was dreadful to get through that. Once it picks up, it's fine.
But it's also a character-driven piece. So I can't really fault it for taking some time to build up these characters.
All right, well, give me a more interesting script then.
There wasn't really that much in terms of interactions.
Yeah.
There was a lot of repetition in that first.
Look, I love a character-driven piece as much as anybody. I've given many of them A's and A pluses, but they have to also be captivating.
I won't deny that, but what would you have preferred? Them randomly shooting people to give you a body count?
I would love that, but A plus.
No, not necessarily.
To be honest,
just I don't know. Give me a reason to care, maybe.
Guys searching for a long lost friend. That's not enough?
Not really.
Wow.
I wasn't as intrigued. But I do think it's funny that you and I have been pretty opposite on these Oscars the last month. You think the hot streak's right now. I thought it was like a month ago with Bachelor and the Bobby Soxer and Bachelor Mother. Those were my jam.
I like those too, though. So,
yeah, you think we've been on a real hot streak. The last 8 Oscar movies have been good for you.
I've liked most of the Oscar movies. I think they're fine.
Yeah, the beats have been pretty good actually so far. But yeah, look, I wouldn't be... Now that I sort of know these characters and I do... because of the last hour of the movie, care a little bit more about the story, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to watching it again and looking at the beginning and say, okay, well, now that I sort of care about these characters from the start, let's see how it builds up. But, no, I thought it was pretty boring, to be honest. But all right, well, that is going to wrap it up for this week. We do have our listener's choice for the month coming up very shortly, so if you do have a suggestion you'd like us to review for that, as long as it's more than 2 years old, we will entertain that notion, and you can let us know that in the comment section here on the channel, or join the Facebook group, Film Fanatics with an exclamation point, or the Twitter feed, at Film Fanatics Pod, and you can also see our 5-word reviews there posted weekly. We've got a couple of minisodes that you can check out, the Back to the Future minisode and also the 2-year anniversary minisode. Both of those are up as well as our weekly podcasts. And Joe, you've got the Merlin channel up and hopping, although winding down for the summer. Not too many probably specific film releases coming up until maybe Spectre and
the
Hunger Games, perhaps.
Movie I can think of that will be, for me at least, will be Agent 47.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. Hitman, yep.
Yeah, that's the last big one for movie reviews for me, yeah.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for the show. And thanks so much for listening. We'll see you back here next week. Bye.